click the links to join the channel to check out the various other video platforms. So this is just the most insufferable collection of buzzwords where if you're in the real world and you heard someone talking like this, you know who you're talking with. Like if you're at an event where you can, I mean, most people are going to be polite when they hear this kind of language spoken. It becomes quickly apparent that either you have to respond in the same, using the same language structure and tone of voice. It's like the NPR speak. She does this interviews with I don't know, Variety or Hollywood Entertainment or something, where it's just they're both, her and the interviewer, are just on the same page of just babble of buzzwords back and forth, where they're signaling to each other who they are. They're on the same page. It's like it. I mean, everyone does their own version of dog whistling, but when you're in a Hollywood echo chamber, you don't have to dog whistle. You can spout this nonsense because you're never going to be exposed to someone who asks you to define terms. And I don't even mean in a challenging way. I just mean to ask you to put you on the back, ask you to clarify things a little bit, because they know that either you're on the same page as them or you're not, because if you're on the same page as them, you don't ask them to clarify things. They make these just asinine statements, and you just have to kind of accept them because you're both using that NPR voice of you're both using the same voice and you're also using the same buzzwords. So it's like they're signaling to each other, we're both in the center of this herd and we believe all this kind of stuff, and we're not going to have any of our ideas are never going to be challenged by anyone, because that's not the way interviews are done anymore. And ultimately, like, you just wouldn't, if you were asking questions like that, it's like you wouldn't be granted any more interviews. So it's like this self-censoring, self-selecting type of thing. And then, it's like if you're working for Variety or Hollywood Entertainment, you're just not going to be the kind of person who's asking those kind of real questions. And ultimately, it's pop culture too. I get that. But as a consequence, you get these interviews that come across as just lunatic ravings of just the furthest left, like San Francisco Tesla or LA, in their own, like their furthest echo chamber of an echo chamber. Eventually, and every once in a while you come across these people in your day-to-day life, and you hear them speak, and you try not to let them see the expression on your face that that you're dealing with a crazy person who's probably all like this is like kind of first world problems. Like, you're talking to someone who's probably extraordinarily wealthy because they're coming from this protected area where they can say this kind of nonsense because they're getting in a $200,000 AMG and they're going back to a gated estate and a multi-million-dollar home kind of thing, because they've never been exposed to anything that challenges a lot of their beliefs. Anyway, so this is this insufferably woke Game of Thrones. Sell more burgers? No, they don't give a rat's tail about selling more burgers. So she uses every nonsense buzzword to signal that she and the show are, of course, woke, and she's, I don't know, somewhere on the BLT type of thing where I don't know who she prefers, but sexually speaking, but I think she doesn't. I'm not sure what that identity type of thing works with her. It's something weird, but it's like it's all made. I don't even, can I say it's made up on YouTube? I feel like we're kind of right on the cusp. You could say things, the things you could say 2 years ago are not things you could say a year ago, are not things you could say today, and the things you say today are not the things you're going to be able to say in 6 months. If you don't make videos, you don't understand how far things are progressing on YouTube with the censorship. The most you might have noticed, and it is a good idea to make videos because it's a learning experience to see both sides of the equation. You might have noticed that videos on YouTube are kind of flat. Like, if I won't name the channel names, but if you're listening to a lot of those pop culture channels, you're not getting the spiciness that you kind of remember of a couple of years ago, maybe in live streams. But even then, you can hear the caution in their voices. Like if someone on a panel brings something up, and that's why usually people who are doing live streams like if they all have big accounts, they know it's safer to be around other people with big accounts because they know the ropes by then. They know what can and cannot be said. And even on live streams, you hear them, you hear how cautious they are because I mean they're protecting their investment. I get that, but you probably, if you think about it, you've probably noticed that like all the channels you listen to, the ones that are still around, like the spice isn't there. The excitement isn't there. The edginess isn't there. And it's not like YouTube even 3 years ago, 5 years ago was edgy. And if you're listening to pop culture channels, but there was something different there that is just not present anymore because people like once these channels get big, they start making money. I'm not saying this is a passive thing because it's nothing against them. It's against YouTube. It's they have to start being cautious because they want to protect that investment, and the censorship on YouTube is so insanely. You hear people searching for words, and a lot of like material. It feels like they want to say something else, but they can't say it just because the censorship on YouTube is like they have the experience of you get your video removed and the channel struck for saying something that you didn't even know was against the rules because you didn't know what the rules were. Anyway, I mean that's the advantage of Odyssey. And to be fair, some people are doing doing exclusive videos on the Odyssey channel, so that's kind of cool. So here's the thing with all this kind of nonsense buzzwords that she's talking about. Everything is gender this and pronoun that and exploring the patriarchy. It's just every nonsense buzzword that's popular today. And in a few years from now, it's like, gee, a few years ago, people didn't take this stuff seriously. Oh, well, things are different now. We've educated ourselves and we've progressed and learned. Yeah, okay. But I mean, it seems like it's an ever evolving, moving of the goalposts where even the left doesn't want to define any kind of dogma now. Because if they put something down concrete in writing, you go, like 5 years from now, you're probably going to be canceled for whatever you believe in right now that is a current progressive accepted viewpoint. They know that too. So putting things in concrete, that's why they keep things very fluid and they just stay in the center of the herd because, they know the way of the world as well as anyone else. Anyway, so there's this kind of nonsense about lecturing us on pronouns and binary something. Is it still allowed on YouTube to say that she's a woman? The character's a woman? So I don't understand the concept of why she would think that she could identify as anything other than a woman. And the character is a woman because it's played by an adult human female. You have breasts and a vagina. Those are pretty good indicators of what you are. So the only surprise would be if she wasn't woke or the show wasn't woke and the show like, you know what, we're gonna stick with Tolkien's. Is this Tolkien? Or no, who's this other guy? The other guy who wrote this, I forget. We're gonna Ben Rings of Power is kind of the same example. If you thought you're gonna stick with the original vision of the author, it's like that would be the surprise. Yeah, we're not. We're just gonna be as close to the books as possible. We really want to stay with that artistic vision of the original source material. Like all of a sudden, that would be the needle on the record scratching there. It's like, wait a minute. Like as I forget the guy's name, the kind of the chubby guy who wrote this series of books. He was woke for the time, and he's woke now. But when he wrote the books probably over a 20-year period, that wasn't woke enough as needs to be woke now. I mean, now we're kind of at the tipping point with this stuff where I think it's reaching the unwatchable phase where you've got this Rings of Power, She-Hulk, and all the stuff that's coming out. I didn't realize Star Wars had so much. If you go online and you search what the streaming platform has, including the animation stuff, you're like, whoa, there's a ton of, they call it content, which is that is kind of passive aggressive because if you look at it, you realize like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there with Star Wars names on it and a bunch of other IPs, but none of it's good. Like all the streaming stuff that comes out, which doesn't matter if it's DC, Warner Brothers, or any of these companies that own these properties, none of it's good. The Marvel thing is the same way. You look at it and like, oh, this is just filler material to get people to think they have to subscribe to a streaming service to pay that money, and then they get on there and they look at these shows and the streaming stuff, no, that's not worth paying for at all. So yeah, the surprise would be if they decided to stay with the artistic original vision. But then if she wasn't woke, like if she was legitimately I'm not even, of course, a right of center person, because you wouldn't even get your foot in the door. But if you were just a normal kind of, like, you didn't speak in this kind of woke, wine drinking Tesla, uh, deepest enclave of San Francisco type of buzzword language, you probably would never have been hired. You're just not going to get that interview. It's a self-selecting echo chamber. It just gets worse and worse every year. The question is, like, are people into this nonsense? Has the humiliation ritual gone on this far that people are so psychologically dejected that they're willing to accept this and pay for it? I hope not. I really hope not. In some regards, the pendulum is swinging back. I guess the white pill is, Odyssey, Bit Chute, Gab, all these other alt platforms, where suddenly you can break this stuff down, and on those platforms you do have freer speech to say, I say all kinds of crazy stuff. And some of my Bit Chute and Odyssey titles are like, they're deliberately like over the top. I get that they're not. Most of them are not serious when I say some of those titles. Now you're furiously looking them up to see how offensive they are. A plot twist, pretty offensive, but they're just being silly for the most part, because it's, you always want to kind of wave your waggle your fingers at these kind of people. So they say that this is, I think, better than the Rings of Power, but what kind of comparison is that? They're both absolutely insane. I will say the Rings of Power is unwatchable. The first 3 episodes, maybe you could watch it, but I think it was the third or fourth episode where the guy's giving a lecture on, I don't know, like open borders type of thing. And like, they took our jobs, but I think even in the first episode, somebody reminded me that the guy uses the phrase knife ears, which, it's their version of the K word, right? It's like, what are they trying to say there? It's like, oh, so is it? I don't even remember the character, but I'm assuming it was a fair-skinned, light-eyed, light-haired character who said that to the elf, who I think was of darker countenance. Like, it's not ever some other equation. It's always, they have a narrative to push. They very, very much have a narrative to push. So comparing these shows to say one is better than the other is just like, yeah, okay, congratulations for that relative achievement, that very, very relative achievement. Like they said, I think She-Hulk, somebody released these ratings, and as it's coming out, like, all these streaming platforms are lying their asses off about the numbers, because they're fudging stuff. Like, it's like, I know Nerdette got really triggered about the comic book sales, but and I say this, like, I don't have to look at the sales numbers, and because you'll never know them because they're digital, right? But I don't have to actually look at the numbers, because I know, I've read the material. I know it sucks. I know it's not selling. So yes, they can fudge those numbers as much as they want, but I don't need to see them. I read the source material. It's absolute dog feathers. The same with this. Like, okay, one show is selling relatively better than another. And that's with all the fudging of the numbers, because you can watch these shows on various online platforms that you lawfully and legally pay for, of course, and you see they're horrible. Like, the most people would give some of these shows is, okay, we'll give it like 3 episodes, and then after that you just go, oh, I just can't. It's not. You'd have to pay me to watch these shows. Andor, the 3 episodes of Andor was like, oh, that was 3 bad episodes in a row. And then someone said episode 4. I guess I'll watch it later tonight. So that was a little bit better, but you can't come back from, like, nothing is going to be good. Everything, all these shows, all the mainstream companies I named, all the mainstream companies that are making movies, and there's only a dozen of them that are in the top echelons, and they're tied in with their own distribution networks. You're not going to see anything that's not this. They might, like, even stuff. It might not all be above board lectures like the movie I saw last night, the Charlie's Angels, where the first 5 minutes is a lecture on like feminist talking points or something like that. It might be like Andor, Star Wars, where it's not Andor, the show's called Andor, where the every bad character looks a certain way and is from the UK. So it's like, that's the subconscious thing they want you to think of is, oh, United Kingdom, these accents, imperialism, colonialism, all these why people bad, even though the one guy was black, but he was in the UK military, so he was a product of that machine. So he was, furthering their purpose, even though he wasn't in English or, natively from the UK. But it's like that's the narrative they're trying to push to convince you of this theme of, okay, so I saw 3 episodes of that Star Wars thing, and all the good characters have dark hair, dark eyes, and slightly darker skin. Though I mean, a lot of the Latino actors they're using are pretty much mostly European, to the point where it's like this is kind of a northwestern Europe fight versus the Mediterranean kind of fight mostly, but it's very clear, like the optics of it: dark hair, dark eyes versus the antagonists. I don't know, the trade guild enforcers and the guards who were, shaking some guy down for 300 credits or something. It's like, yeah, those guys all look a different way. They all have lighter features. So it's, the narrative that I've said on YouTube for 1,000 effing times of you can draw a piece of paper with a line down the middle and put protagonists on one side, antagonists on the other side, and then simply describe hair color and eye color, and the correlation is going to be fair is going to be bad and dark is going to be good. And I'm not wrong with that. I mean, challenge accepted if you'd like to go out there and go watch a commercial, go watch Star Wars, go watch any of these programs. This is the future of all this stuff. There's no way to, there's this, where's the clip? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fucking fabulous. So now people hear that and they hear the expression, they immediately think, oh, istophobic. How does this advance the story? Like, forget about the istophobic terms. Instead of deflecting, like, look at the story. How does this advance the story? Does it have verisimilitude, the willing suspension of disbelief? Do these different tribes... Listen, I'm not saying you can't, if you want to put specifically a non-Euro characters, even in a European story. I've told you before in earlier videos, there's a way to do it, even for Lord of the Rings, which they shouldn't be there. It should be a European only story, but there is a way to do it. You have to make them their own separate tribe. You can't do stuff like Rings of Power where all the hobbits live together, but they all look different. Or I think they do it across all these platforms. Like, oh, so you guys are in a village. You've been there for like 10,000 years together, but you're distinctly of African origin, and you're distinctly of, probably English origin, like, rosy cheek type stuff. It's like, so you guys have been together for 1,000 years in this tribe, this village. Yeah, that's right. We're a tribe. We're a village. But you never got drunk and screwed. Because that's usually how things work. Like, people usually take the poon available to them after a few beers, and then after a few generations, you're going to look the same. So it's like you would have been better off just taking one group of people who all look like they homogeneously belong together. It's like, oh yeah, but then they're not different. It's like, yeah, that's why the story falls apart. You can't make these stories because they don't make sense unless they're, the way I said, they have to be from different tribes that come together to fight a common enemy. It's like, oh yeah, we're not going to do that. They're going to be together, but they're going to be visually distinct. It's like, that's just the R word for disabled. It doesn't make any sense. And worse, like, it has nothing to do with race and ethnicity, and people get distracted by that. It has to do with storytelling, and the story doesn't make sense. It's like, oh yeah, we got German Shepherds and Basset Hounds together. Okay, well, they're products of different environments. That doesn't, eventually after, a dozen generations, you're going to have this new breed of, a shepherd with a enhanced sense of tracking type of thing. It's like, oh, yeah, we're not going to do that either. Well, what's the point of making these shows? It's humiliation ritual, cultural Marxism. It is what it is. How many times can I say that? I feel like I've exhausted that, but it's staying within the YouTube guidelines and trying to make these videos is a lot of fun. It's a challenge. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys all next episode.